Hey everyone, this is Eric Hadley with Black Hat Algorithms. Today we're going to do a tutorial on denial of service attacks. And we're going to perform a denial of service attack with a UDP flutter. UDP stands for User Datagram Protocol. It's basically a data sending protocol for networks, and it's a connectionless data sending protocol, so it's really good to use this type of protocol for flooding servers and doing DOSs. Now, what a DOS is used for is to pretty much like take up all the bandwidth on a site, or you can do it on a computer, any server, you know. And what it does is it sends a bunch of data to the server, and the server is getting all this data. So it's really taking up its resources, like its CPU resources and its bandwidth and all that. So when other people try to connect to it, like legitimate clients try to connect to it, they can't connect to it because it's too busy, because all its resources are being taken up by all the packets being sent by the flutter. So it's a good way. You can use it in many different situations, like if you simply just don't want someone to be on the internet, you can just go ahead and flood them, get them off the internet. If for SEO purposes, search engine optimization purposes, say if you have a competitor and he's beating you out with the search engines, you can just go ahead and do a DOS on his site. You'd have to do a DDoS, a distributed denial of service, and in order to do that, you'd have to infect other systems and do a get slaves, and then tell those slaves to do a DOS attack on that server in order to take it down. You can also use DOS attacks to you do a DOS attack, and then you do your penetration of the server, kind of to throw off the security. It's kind of like you do your attack when they're busy trying to control the DOS, and you go in and do whatever you want and you get out. So those are just some ways to do a DOS attack, and that's why they do them. And there are other DOS attacks besides just a UDP. There's ICMP. That's pretty good too. But anyhow, that'll be in another tutorial, I guess, maybe. So let's go ahead and start coding this thing up, and we'll run some tests on it. I've already made this form here. I simply have 3 text boxes, and this is called text box 1, text box 2, text box 3. I have 2 buttons, button 1, button 2. I have a status bar, status strip, excuse me, and a timer. Okay. And then I also have these labels here that are going to display statistics of the flutter. The count is basically going to count and iterate every time it goes through the timer that we're going to be using. The rate is pretty much going to tell you how much data it's sending per second. And the data sent is pretty much going to tell you the total data sent. And right here we're going to type in our server's IP that we want to attack, the interval of our timer, and then right here is going to be the data that we're sending to them. This is going to start the flooding, and this is going to stop the flooding. Let's go ahead and jump in the code. Go ahead and make a class. Now, double click on this to get the load event. And we gotta set some things up. I'm gonna make it so the max box is disabled, so because there's really no reason to make it any bigger. It's just good practice. So it makes it so if the user tries to make it bigger, it'll make the program look sloppy and all that. We're gonna also do so you can't resize it as well. or he or she, excuse me. I'm going to go ahead and set the default for the text boxes. I'm going to do default of this standard IP address. And this is going to be our interval, so I'm going to set that to 1. Text box 3.text. Now remember, this is the data. We're going to have to convert this into a data byte array. So I'm just going to put in some random data. Clean that up a bit. Alright, that should be good. Now I'm going to set the labels for our statistics to 0. I'm going to disable the timer so it doesn't start, flooding as soon as we start the program. And the status, what's that control called? Status strip 1. Status strip 1 dot text equals waiting to flood server. Okay. Now that we got that all set up, let's go ahead and go ahead and click on our timer. And what we're going to do is we're just going to have it go through random ports. So, I mean, when you're doing a DOS attack, you actually want to do research on the server before you perform your attack. Like, you're going to want to do a port scan and find out which ports are open, and then send certain packets through that open port. But we're not going to do that this time. We're just going to make it so the IPs, the ports are random. So it's just going to do random ports and send data all over the place to like every single port. Because I haven't done a port scanner tutorial yet, so I guess I'm gonna have to do that next. So that's why we're doing the random port, because I simply haven't taught you guys about the doing port scans. So let's go ahead and create a random object. Call it rand as name random. All right. Now we're gonna make our UDP client, which is gonna send off our packets. Let's go ahead and do that. Sockets. Now we're going to make a byte array so we can store our data into it. All this data, we're going to store it into there. So dim data array as byte equals to system.text encoding ASCII2 get bytes. And we're going to get the bytes from text box 3. Okay, now that we have all that set up, we need to connect to the server with the UDP client. So